The weight of the day is already beginning to leave your shoulders, settling gently into the mattress beneath you like sand finding its natural level. The room around you is growing quiet. Outside, a soft rain begins to fall against the glass, blurring the sharp edges of the world. And in another room, in another time, a woman stands watching that same gentle rain. Her name is Virginia Woolf, and she is simply looking out into the damp evening as the air cools. She possessed a brilliant mind that would eventually reshape how stories could be told, carefully bending time and memory into something entirely new. Yet she also carried a quiet, lifelong weight alongside that extraordinary gift, a heaviness she navigated with quiet grace day by day. She moved slowly. The interior light of her home casts long, soft shadows across the wooden floorboards, while the rhythmic tapping of the rain outside creates a steady, comforting hum. There is no rush tonight, no urgency to uncover the dramatic chapters of her history, but rather an unhurried, peaceful unfolding of a life lived deeply. We will trace her path chronologically, moving gently from a childhood house filled with books to the quiet country gardens where she paced and gathered her thoughts. The mind can simply drift. She gave the world new ways to understand human consciousness, writing the internal world with a tenderness that still echoes in quiet rooms today. As we follow her quiet steps through the passing years, you can just rest, allowing her words to become a peaceful backdrop to your own steady, deepening breath. The lamplight reflects softly against the wet window pane, drawing everything inward into a quiet, warm space where nothing is required of you. She turns from the glass. Her thoughts are already forming into flowing sentences that will one day fill thousands of pages, and the house settles around her. Gradually, the heavy thoughts of the waking hours fade away. The year is 1882, and the world is moving at a different, more deliberate pace. In a tall, layered house in the South Kensington neighborhood of London, a young girl named Adeline Virginia Stephen takes her first quiet breaths. The house at 22 Hyde Park Gate is a large, sturdy structure built to hold the expansive lives of a complex and blended Victorian family. It is a home filled with the soft rustle of garments, the muffled sounds of footsteps on thick carpets, and the continuous, comforting presence of books. The air inside is still. The tall windows filter the afternoon sun, casting long, golden, geometric shapes across the floorboards, where dust motes drift lazily in the quiet light. Her father, Leslie Stephen, is a man who lives entirely within the realm of ideas and ink, serving as a historian and the first editor of a vast biographical dictionary. He spends his days in a quiet study at the top of the house, surrounded by shelves that stretch from the floor to the ceiling, holding thousands of volumes. The smell of old paper and worn leather bindings permeates the hallways, settling into the very fabric of the curtains and the upholstery. Virginia learns early on that this library is a sanctuary, a place where time slows down and the outside world gently falls away. She is listening. She wanders into this quiet room, allowed unrestricted access to the heavy leather-bound volumes, and she simply sits and reads as the hours pass. The household is a crowded one, shaped by the blending of two distinct families into a single bustling ecosystem. Her mother, Julia, is a woman of remarkable presence and history, having been born in India and having once served as a model for painters who tried to capture her quiet grace on canvas. Julia moves through the rooms of Hyde Park Gate with a steady, organizing energy, balancing the needs of 8 children gathered under one roof. There are older children from Julia's first marriage, an older daughter from Leslie's previous marriage, and the 4 younger siblings they share together: Vanessa, Toby, Virginia, and little Adrian. The house is never truly empty. Yet, amidst the hum of so many intersecting lives, there is always a pocket of stillness to be found. Virginia discovers these quiet spaces effortlessly, tucking herself into a window seat or a corner of the drawing room with a book resting in her lap. The afternoon light shifts gradually across the walls, turning from pale yellow to a deep, resonant amber as the sun begins to set over London. The staircase creaks softly as family members move between the floors, a familiar and reassuring sound that simply reminds her she is not alone. The world inside Hyde Park Gate is entirely self-contained, built upon conversations, letters, and the steady accumulation of shared knowledge. She listens closely. She absorbs the cadence of the voices around her, the way adults debate history and philosophy over evening tea while the shadows lengthen in the corners of the room. By the time she is 5 years old, she is already practicing the art of forming letters on paper, her small hand moving slowly and carefully across the page. Words become her truest companions, offering a way to capture the fleeting moments of her childhood and hold them perfectly still. When she is 10, she starts a small, illustrated family newspaper called the Hyde Park Gate News, documenting the gentle daily dramas of her siblings and parents with a quiet, observant focus. She watches the people she loves, turning their ordinary afternoons into written stories, safely preserved within the folded pages of her notebooks. Her mind is a quiet observer. She is learning how to weave reality into narrative, discovering that a sentence can hold the warmth of a room or the soft sound of rain against a window pane. The days fold into one another with a reassuring predictability, anchored by the changing of the seasons and the reliable ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. In the winter, the fireplaces are kept burning, casting a warm, flickering glow across the carpets and making the library feel even more insulated from the damp chill outside. The scent of wood smoke mingles with the ever-present aroma of books, creating an atmosphere that is heavy, warm, and deeply settling. Virginia rests her head against the back of a deep armchair, watching the flames dance and letting her thoughts drift aimlessly through the quiet room. The house breathes with her. It is a place of immense intellectual weight, yet to a child it is simply a vast and endlessly fascinating world to explore. There is no rush to grow up, no urgency to step outside into the loud, demanding streets of the city beyond their front door. The Victorian era is stretching toward its close, but inside this house, time seems to be held perfectly still, preserved in the amber of family routine and quiet study. The children play in the nursery, their voices carrying softly down the corridors, while below them their father's pen scratches steadily across another sheet of paper. Everything is exactly where it should be. The safety of the house wraps around Virginia like a heavy woolen blanket, keeping the cold at bay and allowing her imagination to bloom in the gentle warmth. As the evening approaches, the lamps are lit one by one, their soft yellow glow pushing back the gathering twilight and drawing the family closer together. The sound of horse-drawn carriages clattering over the cobblestones outside becomes sparse and distant, fading gently into the background noise of the city. Inside, the quiet returns once more, settling over the rooms and hallways like a fine, invisible dust that quiets every sudden movement. Virginia climbs into her bed, the crisp cotton sheets cool against her skin, and she listens to the settling sounds of the old house. Her eyes grow heavy. The voices of her family murmur through the walls, a soft and distinct lullaby that promises another day just like this one, full of books and quiet corners. Through the long nights, the house stands as a quiet guardian over the sleeping family, its walls thick and its foundations deeply rooted in the London earth. The library below waits patiently in the dark, the thousands of books standing shoulder to shoulder on their shelves, holding centuries of thoughts and dreams perfectly still. Virginia breathes slowly in the darkness, her own dreams beginning to form, lightly colored by the stories she has read and the gentle voices she has heard throughout the day. The world is entirely at rest, suspended in a long, peaceful pause that asks absolutely nothing of her. The quiet is absolute. It is a stillness that reaches deep into the bones, softening every muscle and allowing the mind to simply let go. The years slip forward with the gentle, unhurried pace of a river rounding a bend, bringing the household to the spring of 1895. Virginia is now 13 years old, and the edges of her childhood are gently beginning to soften and blur. Outside the tall windows of Hyde Park Gate, the seasons continue their familiar cycle, but inside, the atmosphere is slowly shifting. Her mother, Julia, has always been the steady, organizing center of their large, chaotic family, the quiet force that kept the many rooms of their lives tethered together. The house feels different now. A quick illness, swift but quietly managed behind closed doors, takes Julia away from them, leaving a profound and heavy stillness in her wake. There is no loud drama or frantic energy in this parting, but rather a slow descending quiet that settles over the remaining family members. Like a thick woolen blanket, the grief that follows is not a sharp, jagged thing, but rather a long, slow exhalation, a period of profound pausing for everyone in the house. The curtains in the drawing rooms are drawn, filtering the bright spring sunlight into a soft, muted gray that matches the subdued tones of their voices. The house grows quiet. Virginia observes this change with the wide, taking-in eyes of a writer, watching how the adults move more slowly, how the usual sounds of the house are muffled and hushed. The grief is simply weather, a gray sky that has settled over their roof, altering the light but not destroying the foundation of the home they know. She stops writing her family newspaper, putting her pen down for a time, allowing the silence to simply exist without trying to shape it into sentences or stories. It is during this extended period of quiet mourning that Virginia experiences her first deep retreat inward, a shadow that modern observers might recognize as the beginning of a lifelong illness, but which then is just a profound need for rest. Her mind, so brilliantly perceptive and constantly taking in the details of the world around her, simply becomes overwhelmed by the heavy, sorrowful air of the house. She needs a break. The breakdown is not an explosion, but a gentle folding inward, a withdrawal from the daily rhythms of the family as her body and mind demand a pause. The adults in her life, though unsure of exactly how to help, recognize that she requires time and a complete lack of expectation, allowing her to stay in her room where the light is low. Her mind is resting. She sleeps, she dreams, and she floats in a suspended state where the demands of reality are temporarily held at bay, waiting for her internal weather to clear. The house itself seems to breathe with her during this time, its thick walls providing a safe, insulated barrier between her fragile state and the busy, noisy streets of London. Her father, Leslie, retreats further into his own quiet study, losing himself among his books and the comforting, predictable histories of people who lived long ago. The family learns to step softly. Vanessa, Virginia's older sister, begins to take on the quiet, organizing role that their mother once held, moving through the rooms with a steady, stabilizing grace that anchors the younger siblings. They sit together in the evenings, the fire burning softly in the grate, reading or simply looking into the flames, finding comfort in the shared silence and the physical presence of one another. The world outside continues its steady march, but inside the walls of Hyde Park Gate, time is stretched and slowed, allowing them all to gradually heal at their own unhurried pace. Just as the household is beginning to find its new rhythm, another quiet loss arrives with the passing of Virginia's half-sister, Stella, only 2 years later in the warm months of 1897. Again, the event is absorbed into the fabric of the home, not as a terrifying shock, but as another layer of somber, reflective quiet that they must all learn to navigate. The house absorbs it all. Virginia writes in her diary about these absences, noting the empty chairs and the missing voices. But she does so with a growing sense of narrative distance, practicing the art of putting emotion onto paper where it can be safely contained. The losses are like leaves falling from a tree in autumn, a natural, if melancholy, part of the landscape that they are all walking through together. She watches the light shift. The grief is no longer a storm, but a persistent, gentle rain that softens the edges of their days and makes the warmth of the library fire feel even more precious and necessary. As the turn of the century approaches, Virginia is growing into a thoughtful, profoundly observant young woman, her mind a vast, deep pool that reflects everything it sees. The heavy Victorian furniture, the dark wood paneling, and the endless rows of books are her entire universe, a self-contained world where she continues to read and watch and learn the shapes of human emotion. The years move softly. She's beginning to understand that the things we lose do not truly disappear, but instead become part of the internal architecture of our minds, shaping the way we see the world and the words we choose to describe it. Even the difficult things, the shadows and the quiet traumas she experiences during these years, are eventually folded into her deep, reflective reservoir of material, waiting for the day when she will know how to write them into light. She simply takes it in. Her mind is a quiet, steady recording instrument, noting the way the dust settles on a windowsill or the exact shade of twilight over the London rooftops. The chapter of her childhood is gradually coming to a close, ending not with a dramatic door slamming, but with the gentle fading of a long, late afternoon sun. The house at Hyde Park Gate, with all its heavy memories and lingering ghosts, has given her the foundation she needs, teaching her both the profound beauty of literature and the quiet, persistent ache of human fragility. The shadows lengthen in the room. As she sits by the window, watching the street lamps flicker on one by one in the gathering dusk, she is simply a young woman at rest, her hands resting quietly in her lap. The house around her is perfectly still. The only sound the distant, muffled ticking of the hallway clock, marking the slow, peaceful passage of time that requires absolutely nothing of her tonight. You can just rest. The past is safely contained within the pages of books and the quiet corners of memory, leaving the present moment completely peaceful, warm, and wonderfully still. The quiet years at Hyde Park Gate draw to a close with the passing of Virginia's father in 1904, marking the gentle end of a long, heavy era. Virginia is now 22 years old, stepping carefully out of the deep Victorian shadows that had defined her early life. It is time for a change. Her older sister, Vanessa, makes a decision that gently but firmly shifts the course of all their lives. The four siblings pack their belongings, leaving the dark wood paneling and the heavy curtains behind, and move across the city to a tall, airy house at 46 Gordon Square in the neighborhood of Bloomsbury. The new house feels entirely different. The rooms are brighter, the walls painted in lighter colors, and the tall windows let in the soft, unhindered London light. They are young, unmarried, and stepping into a quiet but profound independence. The air inside the new home feels fresh and full of quiet promise. As the siblings settle into Gordon Square, a new rhythm begins to establish itself, centered around the simple act of opening their doors to friends. On Thursday evenings, the house comes alive with a warm, steady energy as Toby invites his Cambridge companions to gather in the sitting room. The lamps are lit early, casting a welcoming glow over the mismatched furniture and the cups of tea resting on low tables. The murmur of conversation drifts through the half-open doors, creating a comforting, continuous hum that fills the hallways. They are just friends, really. These are young writers, artists, and thinkers, drawn together by a shared desire to talk about art, philosophy, and the changing world. They sit in deep armchairs, the smoke from their pipes curling lazily toward the ceiling. The atmosphere is warm. Virginia and Vanessa join these discussions easily, their voices mingling with those of the men, sharing ideas in a space where they are truly seen and heard. In this atmosphere of quiet intellectual freedom, Virginia begins to find her own distinct voice, taking her first gentle steps into the world of professional writing. By 1904, she is writing reviews for a clerical paper, and soon after, her thoughtful critiques find a home in more prestigious literary supplements. She sits at her desk, a fresh sheet of paper before her, and simply lets her mind work. She is learning her craft slowly and deliberately, analyzing how other authors construct their sentences and build their imagined worlds. The scratch of her pen is a steady, reassuring sound in the quiet room. She is practicing. Every review she writes is a quiet exercise in observation, a way of training her ear for the exact rhythm and cadence of the English language. The work requires focus, but it is a deeply satisfying kind of labor, grounding her thoughts and giving them a solid, permanent shape on the page. The gentle current of these years brings inevitable changes as life continues its slow, unfolding progression through the turning seasons. In 1906, their beloved brother Thoby falls ill after a journey, and quite peacefully, he slips away from them. The loss is profound, yet the siblings have learned how to hold their grief softly, supporting one another through the quiet gray days that follow. The house absorbs this transition. Not long after, Vanessa marries Clive Bell, creating a new family of her own and gently shifting the balance of the household once more. Virginia feels the space her sister leaves behind, but she understands that this is simply the natural branching of their lives. She moves with her younger brother Adrian to another house in Fitzroy Square, keeping the same Bloomsbury address and the same comforting routines. The Thursday gatherings continue without pause. The circle of friends remains a steady, reliable anchor, a constellation of familiar faces that provides warmth against the cool London evenings. The world of Bloomsbury is not just a place, but a quietly expansive state of mind, offering Virginia the space she needs to breathe and explore. The neighborhood itself is a patchwork of leafy squares and quiet streets, far removed from the rigid, formal expectations of her Victorian childhood. She takes long, slow walks beneath the overarching trees, watching the leaves drift down to rest on the damp pavement. She feels completely at ease. Her mind is constantly at work as she walks, turning over ideas for essays and stories, observing the gentle, ordinary flow of life passing by. She watches people buying flowers, notices the changing color of the sky, and gently folds these small details into her memory. The city is a vast, open book. She is no longer just reading the stories of others, but slowly gathering the raw material she will need to write her own. Inside the houses of Bloomsbury, the evenings stretch out in a leisurely, unbroken thread of companionship and shared thought. There is no rush to conclude the conversations, no urgency to reach a definite answer, or solve the mysteries of art and literature. The friends simply enjoy the act of exploring ideas together, their voices rising and falling in a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. The room feels incredibly safe. Among them are painters, critics, and economists, each bringing their own unique perspective to the quiet rooms they share. They challenge one another softly, pushing the boundaries of what is possible in art while maintaining a deep, underlying affection. Virginia finds immense comfort in this chosen family. She listens to the cadence of their words, the soft clinking of teacups, and the shifting of coals in the fireplace. The bonds they form are complex and enduring, woven together by a shared belief in the profound importance of human connection and beautiful things. As the years in Bloomsbury gently accumulate, Virginia's confidence in her own abilities begins to quietly solidify and take root. She is moving away from purely critical writing, feeling the pull of larger, more expansive narratives waiting to be told. The transition is unhurried, a slow opening of doors inside her own mind as she searches for a form that can capture life exactly as she experiences it. She wants to write differently. She wants to capture the luminous, shifting quality of thought itself, the way memories and present sensations blend together in a continuous flowing stream. It is a monumental task, but she approaches it with patience, sitting by her window as the afternoon light gradually fades into evening. She allows her thoughts to drift. There is absolutely no pressure to hurry the process, only a quiet commitment to finding the words that feel perfectly true to her own vision. The neighborhood of Bloomsbury slowly quietens as the night deepens, the street lamps casting long, soft pools of light across the damp cobblestones. Inside Virginia's room, the fire has burned down to a gentle, glowing ember, radiating a steady, comforting warmth that fills the space. She places her pen down on the desk, the day's work softly completed, and prepares to rest. The house settles around her. The familiar creaks of the floorboards and the distant, muffled sounds of the city create a soothing lullaby, assuring her that she is safe and held. Her mind, so active and brilliant during the waking hours, begins to slow its pace, allowing the gentle tide of sleep to approach. You can feel that same quietness now. The world outside can wait until morning, leaving nothing but the soft, steady rhythm of breath and the peaceful, unbroken stillness of the dark room. The quiet, expanding world of Bloomsbury brings many people into Virginia's life, but as the seasons gently turn toward the year 1911, one presence begins to distinguish itself from all the rest. Leonard Woolf returns to London after years spent working far away in the colonial service, bringing with him a deep, grounding seriousness that provides a profound counterweight to her own restless brilliance. He is a man of remarkable discipline and focus, possessing a quiet strength that doesn't demand the center of attention but simply holds the edges of the room together. He watches her closely. Where the other members of their circle thrive on constant debate and shifting attachments, Leonard offers something entirely different, something that feels remarkably like a safe harbor after a long and unpredictable journey. He recognizes her genius immediately, but more importantly, he recognizes the fragility that accompanies it, and he decides quite simply that he wants to share his life with hers. The courtship is unhurried, unfolding with the gentle pace of a long conversation that spans across quiet afternoons and softly lit London evenings. Virginia takes her time, weighing the profound step of marriage carefully, considering whether she can intertwine her carefully structured life with another person's without losing the independence she has fought so hard to build. Leonard is patient, offering not a fiery, disruptive romance that would shatter her peace, but rather a steadfast companionship built on mutual respect, shared intellect, and a deep, underlying affection. They understand one another. When she finally says yes, it is not an end to her freedom, but the beginning of a profound partnership that will gently frame the rest of her days. They are married in August of 1912, a quiet ceremony that marks a subtle but permanent shift in the atmosphere of her life, bringing a new, stabilizing gravity to her world. Leonard makes the conscious choice to resign from his distant career, leaving behind the demands of the colonial service so that he can remain in England, staying close to Virginia in the literary life she is just beginning to shape. This sacrifice is made without resentment, a quiet gift of time and presence that forms the bedrock of their long partnership together as the years unfold. Their marriage is unusual by the standards of the day, defined less by traditional expectations and much more by an intricate intellectual companionship that sustains them both through the decades. Two people, one room, the quiet scratch of writing. This image becomes the defining rhythm of their shared life, a continuous, comforting loop of shared focus and parallel thought that fills the hours of their days. They sit in deep chairs, reading, writing, and simply being near one another, finding immense comfort in the knowledge that they do not have to face the world entirely alone. As the months slowly turn into years, Leonard gently assumes the role of a quiet guardian, managing the practical details of their daily existence so that Virginia's mind can remain entirely free to wander the vast landscapes of her imagination. He handles the bills, the schedules, and the countless small demands of the outside world, creating a secure, insulated envelope in which her creativity can safely unfold without interruption. He learns the subtle shifts in her moods, noticing when the work is beginning to drain her energy, and he softly intervenes, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder to remind her to rest. He is her anchor. He insists on quiet evenings, on regular meals, and on long, slow walks through the countryside, recognizing that her brilliant mind requires a carefully maintained foundation of physical peace. The weight of his hand is a reassuring pressure, a physical anchor that continuously calls her back to the present moment when her thoughts begin to drift too far out to sea. There are times, of course, when the shadows return, when the immense effort of writing a novel leaves Virginia completely depleted, and the fragile balance of her mind begins to gently tilt. In the year following their marriage, a profound wave of exhaustion washes over her, a deep, pulling weariness that simply demands she stop everything and retreat into the quietest corners of herself. The episode is heavy, requiring a complete withdrawal from the world, but this time, the quiet space around her is fiercely protected by Leonard's unwavering presence and careful attention. He watches over her. The illness is treated not with panic, but with an extended and forced period of absolute rest, allowing the gray days to pass softly until the natural light slowly begins to return to her mind. He sits by her bed in the quiet room, reading a book, his simple, steady presence providing a lifeline that assures her the world will still be there when she is finally ready to return. As she gradually recovers, the rhythm of their shared life resumes its gentle, predictable course, the familiar routines acting as a soothing balm that helps to completely rebuild her strength. They sit together in the late afternoons, a pot of tea placed on the table between them, the cups often cooling untouched as they both become deeply absorbed in their respective thoughts. The house is a sanctuary of quiet productivity, wrapped in a comfortable silence that requires no filling, no forced conversation to prove that they are perfectly content in each other's company. Two people, one room, the quiet scratch of writing. This repeated ritual is more intimate than any grand gesture, a daily reaffirmation of their commitment to support the delicate, necessary work of each other's minds. The walls they have built together feel incredibly safe, a fortress of books and shared ideas that keeps the unpredictable noise of the modern world safely at bay. Leonard understands that Virginia's writing is not just a profession, but the vital, essential mechanism through which she processes her profound experience of being alive in the world. He respects the sacred nature of her concentration, moving softly through the house when he knows she is wrestling with a difficult sentence, ensuring that the atmosphere remains calm and undisturbed. They are a perfectly balanced ecosystem, his rooted, practical nature providing the soil from which her ethereal, experimental prose can safely grow and stretch toward the light. The days pass gently. He writes his own political essays and reviews, engaging with the heavy facts of history and economics, while she spins delicate, luminous webs of memory and consciousness just a few feet away. They are entirely different in their approaches to the world, yet they fit together with the seamless precision of two perfectly matched pieces, creating a whole that is vastly stronger than its parts. As the evening descends over the neighborhood, the room they share slowly fills with the soft, blue light of twilight, blurring the sharp edges of the furniture and softening the stacks of paper on their desks. The fire crackles gently in the hearth, casting a warm, flickering glow that dances across the bindings of the books lining the walls and settles comfortably over their quiet figures. Leonard places his pen down, the subtle sound signaling the gentle conclusion of the day's labor, and Virginia follows, her own mind beginning to slow its rapid, brilliant turning. You can rest now. The heavy, intellectual lifting of the waking hours is done, leaving nothing but the simple, physical comfort of a warm room, a soft chair, and the steady, reassuring presence of someone who knows you perfectly. The quiet scratch of writing has faded away entirely, replaced by the soft, rhythmic sound of breathing as the house settles deeply into the peaceful, unbroken stillness of the night. The passing of time brings us gently to the year 1917, finding Virginia and Leonard living quietly in a house in Richmond, a peaceful suburb where the river slowly winds its way toward the city. The house is called Hogarth House, and it provides a steady, comforting shelter from the noise of the broader world, allowing them to establish a daily rhythm that is entirely their own. It is here, in the quiet expanse of their dining room, that they introduce a new, profoundly grounding element into their shared life, purchasing a small hand-printing press for exactly £19. The machine is heavy and solid. It sits squarely on the sturdy wooden table, a quiet promise of physical labor and a new kind of focused attention that does not require the intense, draining effort of writing a novel. They look at it together, understanding instinctively that this humble piece of machinery will slowly become the center of a beautiful, self-contained world. The decision to bring the press into their home is born of a deep understanding of what Virginia needs, as Leonard recognizes that the brilliant, continuous turning of her mind requires a physical anchor to pull it safely back to earth. Setting type is a deliberate, tactile process, requiring a person to pick up small pieces of lead one by one, feeling the cold, smooth metal against their skin as they align each letter perfectly in its tray. Her hands move slowly. The work demands a gentle, unwavering focus, drawing her thoughts away from the vast ethereal landscapes of her imagination and anchoring them firmly in the present moment, where only the shape of the letters matters. The smell of printer's ink begins to permeate the room, a rich, dark scent that is both grounded and ancient, signaling a shift from the purely intellectual realm into the quiet, deeply satisfying world of physical craft. Her hands are setting type. The small metal pieces click softly into place, creating a soothing, repetitive sound that acts as a gentle metronome for the quiet afternoon. They are entirely self-taught, learning the intricate mechanics of the press with the unhurried patience of people who have absolutely nowhere else they need to be. There are mistakes in the beginning, of course, with pages ruined by uneven ink or misaligned margins. But these errors are simply part of the quiet, absorbing process of discovering how the machine breathes and works. They stand side by side at the table, adjusting the pressure and aligning the heavy paper, their movements gradually falling into a synchronized dance that requires very few words. They learn together. The mechanical clack of the press becomes a familiar, comforting sound within the house, a steady, rhythmic heartbeat that echoes through the hallways and settles deeply into the floorboards. The hours pass softly in this shared endeavor, the physical exertion leaving Virginia pleasantly tired in a way that feels entirely different from the exhausting, nervous depletion that often follows her intense periods of writing. By the middle of the summer, their quiet dedication yields its very first result, a small, beautifully imperfect publication that contains just 2 stories, one written by Leonard and one by Virginia. They print exactly 150 copies, moving slowly and carefully through the process, and then they sit down together in the fading evening light to bind each and every booklet entirely by hand. The paper is thick and textured. They fold the pages with deliberate care, feeling the slight resistance of the material and the satisfying crisp edge that forms beneath the pressure of their fingertips. The operation is almost absurdly modest, completely disconnected from the bustling, commercial publishing world of London, yet it holds a profound significance for the two people quietly working at their dining room table. They have created a physical object from nothing but their own thoughts and the steady work of their own hands, a small offering of art that they can physically hold and weigh and pass on to their friends. As the days fold into weeks, the rhythm of the work becomes a deeply ingrained habit, transforming the dining room into a meditative space where time seems to slow down and stretch out comfortably. Her hands are setting type. The methodical action of picking up a letter, placing in the stick, and reaching for the next becomes a soft, continuous loop that lulls her active mind into a state of profound, peaceful rest. The room is filled with stacks of paper in low light, the pale edges glowing softly as the afternoon sun gradually gives way to the deep blue shadows of the approaching evening. She can simply be present, feeling the slight smear of dark ink on her fingertips, grounded by the physical reality of the materials and the reliable, predictable mechanics of the heavy iron press. The world outside the windows continues its restless motion, but inside this room, everything is perfectly contained, predictable, and wonderfully still. This small domestic hobby slowly blossoms into something entirely unexpected, providing Virginia with a profound artistic liberation that will eventually change the course of modern literature. Because they own the press, and because they are answering to absolutely no one but themselves, Virginia realizes with a quiet thrill that she is completely free to write exactly what she wants, exactly how she wants to write it. There is no publisher to please. There are no editors demanding changes to her sentences, no commercial pressures forcing her to conform to the traditional, expected shapes of storytelling that she has always found so limiting and false. She can experiment gently, testing the boundaries of her own brilliant mind, knowing that whatever she creates can be safely and securely brought into the world right there on her own dining room table. The press acts as a protective shield, allowing her fragile, experimental prose to grow without the harsh glare of commercial expectation, nurtured in the quiet warmth of their shared home. The Hogarth Press gradually expands its quiet reach as they begin to print the delicate, beautiful poems and stories of their close friends, slowly transforming their home into a vital, beating heart of independent thought. They carefully set the type for writers like Catherine Mansfield and T.S. Eliot, finding a deep, quiet satisfaction in handling the raw words of people they admire, giving those words a physical, lasting form. The work grows more demanding as the years pass, requiring them to occasionally seek outside help for larger printing jobs, but the core of the press remains anchored in the peaceful, domestic space they have created together. The house holds it all. Even as their influence quietly spreads outward, altering the literary landscape of Britain, the day-to-day reality of the work remains remarkably intimate, defined by the smell of ink and the comfortable silence between two people focused on a shared task. The rhythm of the press becomes the underlying rhythm of their marriage, a steady, productive hum that carries them safely through the turning seasons. The evening draws in, pulling the shadows longer across the wooden floorboards, and the small lamp on the table is turned on, casting a warm, concentrated pool of light over the heavy metal type. Her hands are setting type. The rhythmic clack of the press slows its pace, matching the gentle winding down of the day, as the physical labor gracefully yields to the approaching quiet of the night. She wipes the dark ink from her fingertips with a soft cloth, feeling the satisfying ache of muscles that have been used well, a physical tiredness that promises a deep, untroubled rest. The stacks of freshly printed pages are left to dry in the quiet room, holding the thoughts and dreams of the day perfectly still, waiting patiently for the morning light to return. The work is completely done. The heavy machinery of the press rests silently on the table, a sturdy, comforting presence in the dark, asking absolutely nothing more of her as she finally steps away to find her own rest. As the house settles into the deep, unbroken quiet of the late hour, the memory of the day's slow, rhythmic work lingers softly in the air, a peaceful echo that gently smooths away any remaining edges of thought. You can feel that same steady rhythm now, the slow, reliable rise and fall of your own breath, matching the quiet, methodical pace of a life lived gently, one small, deliberate moment at a time. The world of ink and paper is safely put away. The pages are resting in the dark, and there is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to accomplish before the morning comes. The room around you is perfectly still. The heavy, comforting weight of sleep is softly approaching, settling over you like a warm blanket as the last quiet echoes of the day fade completely into the peaceful, welcoming dark. The years move softly into the middle of the 1920s, a period of profound and quiet productivity for Virginia. She and Leonard spend much of their time at Monk's house, their country home in the village of Rodmell in Sussex. The air here is different, smelling of damp earth and growing things, far removed from the busy cobblestone streets of London. She breathes in the quiet. The house is surrounded by a garden that slowly becomes her favorite place to think, a private sanctuary where her mind can wander freely. At the edge of the garden stands a small wooden lodge, separated from the main house, offering her a room entirely dedicated to the quiet act of writing. She walks there each morning. The gravel crunches softly beneath her slow, deliberate footsteps, a reassuring rhythmic sound that signals the beginning of another day spent gathering her thoughts. Inside the quiet hush of the writing room, Virginia is beginning to shape a new kind of story, one that completely abandons the traditional rules of how a novel should behave. She is writing a book called Mrs. People, Dalloway, and she has decided to contain the entire narrative within the space of just one single ordinary day in June. She sits at her desk. She wants to show how a single day can hold an entire lifetime of memories, how the past is always quietly present in the background of our minds. The story follows a woman named Clarissa as she simply prepares to host a party, walking through London on a beautiful, clear morning to buy flowers. The premise is wonderfully simple, yet within this simple framework, Virginia is weaving a vast and intricate tapestry of human consciousness, showing how our thoughts constantly drift, associate, and remember as we move through the world. She is perfecting a method of writing that captures the exact texture of awareness, a flowing style that would later be known as stream of consciousness. Instead of just describing what her characters do, she writes exactly how it feels for them to exist, moving smoothly from one thought to the next, like a slow, continuous river. The sentences flow gently, past and present, gently blurred together, so that a sound or a smell in the present moment can softly carry a character back to their childhood before returning them safely to the present again. She works slowly and carefully. The soft scratch of her pen on the paper is the only sound in the room, a steady, hypnotic rhythm that matches the deep, unbroken focus of her mind. She is not rushing to reach a conclusion, but simply exploring the beautiful, complex inner landscapes of the people she has created, taking all the time she needs to understand them perfectly. As she writes, she introduces another thread into the story, creating a parallel life that runs quietly alongside Clarissa's bright morning walk. This second character is a young man named Septimus, a veteran who carries the heavy, lingering weight of the war in his mind, struggling to find his footing in a world that has changed. They never actually meet, yet their lives are deeply connected by the shared space of the city, by the chiming of the same clocks, and by the profound shared fragility of simply being human. Virginia draws upon her own experiences with illness to write his character, using her own memories of the mind's instability to give his story a deep, compassionate truth. She is writing to heal. By transforming her own past shadows into art, she gently releases them, placing them safely onto the page where they can be understood and held at a safe, reflective distance. When the writing becomes heavy, or the sentences refuse to align, she simply steps away from the desk and walks out into the garden. The air is cool. She paces slowly along the brick paths, her hands clasped behind her back, allowing the physical movement of her body to untangle the complicated knots in her mind. She watches the leaves move. The natural world offers a profound and grounding comfort, a reminder that life continues in a steady, predictable cycle of blooming and resting, regardless of the thoughts spinning in her head. She observes the flowers, noticing the exact shade of their petals and the way they bend slightly in the breeze, folding these small, perfect details into her memory to use later. The garden asks nothing of her, offering only the quiet rustle of the wind and the soft, earthy scent of the soil, gently pulling her back to the peaceful reality of the present moment. The work of writing this novel requires immense concentration, a slow, deliberate breathing in of the world, and a careful, measured breathing out of words onto the page. She inhales slowly. The thoughts gather softly in her mind as she observes the world around her. She exhales gently. The pen moves across the paper, capturing the thought before it can drift away, anchoring it firmly in the dark, permanent ink. The rhythm of her writing mirrors the slow, steady rhythm of a resting body, a continuous cycle of gathering and releasing, of tension dissolving into complete, quiet ease. You can feel this rhythm. As you rest in your own quiet room, you can let your breath match this slow, unhurried pace, allowing each exhale to carry away a little more of the day's lingering weight. The world outside the window is perfectly still, and there is absolutely nothing you need to figure out or resolve before the morning comes. When Mrs. Purcell, Dalloway is finally published in the spring of 1925, it is recognized quietly but firmly as a profound achievement in literature. The reviews are respectful and admiring, acknowledging that Virginia has done something entirely new, changing the shape of what a novel can be and how a story can be told. The book is released. She feels a deep, quiet satisfaction, knowing that she has successfully captured the elusive, shifting nature of time and memory exactly as she wanted to. The intense, absorbing labor of the past few years is gracefully completed, leaving behind a beautiful, finished object that can now live its own life out in the world. She rests now. The heavy lifting of creation is done, and the long, quiet evenings at Monk's House stretch out before her, offering a well-deserved period of mental and physical restoration. The twilight settles deeply over the Sussex Downs, wrapping the garden and the small riding lodge in a soft blue shadow that blurs the edges of the world. Inside the main house, a lamp is gently turned on, casting a warm, golden pool of light over the comfortable chairs and the countless books lining the walls. The house is completely peaceful. Virginia sits quietly, her hands resting in her lap, listening to the soft, muffled sounds of the evening settling in, feeling the pleasant, heavy tiredness that follows a day of good, meaningful work. The demanding voices of her characters have finally grown quiet, tucked safely away within the pages of the finished book, leaving her mind empty and wonderfully still. The night is approaching softly. It is time to simply let go of the day, to allow the heavy, comforting blanket of sleep to draw near, bringing with it the promise of deep, unbroken rest. The gentle progression of the years brings Virginia to the quiet, reflective space of 1927, a time when her mind begins to drift softly backward toward the distant shores of her childhood. Long before the heavy responsibilities of adulthood, before Bloomsbury and the steady rhythm of the printing press, there were the long, luminous summers spent at Tolland House in the coastal town of St. Ives. The memory of this place remains perfectly preserved in her mind, completely untouched by the passing decades, carrying the unmistakable scent of salt air and damp coastal earth. She sits at her desk, allowing the present moment to gently dissolve, replacing the Sussex countryside with the vast, open expanse of Portminster Bay. The water is calm. She remembers the precise way the late afternoon light would hit the surface of the ocean, turning the water into a shimmering, shifting tapestry of gold and deep blue. Across the bay, standing offshore like a quiet, steadfast sentinel, is the Lighthouse, its tall white structure catching the last rays of the sun before the evening completely descends. As the sun eventually dips below the horizon, the lighthouse begins its nightly work, casting a steady, rhythmic beam of light that sweeps slowly across the dark water. This rotation is a profound comfort, a reliable pattern that continues without fail, marking the passage of the night with a slow, sweeping grace. The beam reaches across the waves, briefly illuminating the dark crests of the water before continuing its endless, peaceful circle, leaving the ocean to rest in the comfortable dark until it returns. She watches it. In her memory, she is a child again, lying in her bed with the window open, listening to the soft, rhythmic sound of the waves breaking gently against the distant shore. The light passes softly over her bedroom wall, a quiet reassurance that the world outside is being watched over, that there's a steady anchor holding the vastness of the sea in place. In this suspended space of memory, she begins to write a new novel, gently transforming her own family history into a profound and beautiful piece of art called To the Lighthouse. At the very center of this story is a character named Mrs. Ramsay, a woman deeply inspired by the quiet strength and organizing grace of Virginia's own mother, Julia. Mrs. Ramsay moves through the summer house with a gentle, unseen power, weaving the disparate moods of her family and guests into a temporary, beautiful harmony. She knits, she reads to her children, and she presides over long, softly lit dinners where the conversation flows like a gentle river around the large table. The house breathes with her. Virginia writes these scenes with a profound tenderness, safely capturing the essence of her mother's presence without the sharp, jagged edges of the grief that followed her departure. The mother she lost is lovingly rebuilt on the page, sitting quietly in the fading daylight, forever preserved in the warm, golden amber of a perfect summer afternoon. The process of writing this particular book feels entirely different from the intense, demanding labor of her previous novels, unfolding instead with the ease of a long, sustained exhalation. She works in a quiet, undisturbed trance, the sentences flowing from her pen with a natural, unforced rhythm, as if the story had always existed and was simply waiting to be gently uncovered. The heavy, lingering ghosts of her past, the memories that have shadowed her for over 30 years, are finally being given a proper space to rest. She breathes very slowly. She is no longer fighting against the tide of time, but rather allowing it to carry her softly, understanding that putting these memories onto paper is a profound act of release. The quiet scratch of her pen is a soothing sound, a continuous, rhythmic movement that gradually untangles the complex knots of her childhood, leaving her mind feeling remarkably clear, light, and wonderfully empty. The novel she is creating is structured with an elegant, simple grace, divided into 3 distinct parts that beautifully capture the strange, elastic nature of how we experience time. The middle section is a profound departure from traditional storytelling, focusing not on the busy lives of people, but entirely on the quiet, gradual shifting of an empty house. The family has left, the years begin to slip by in a blur of changing seasons, and the house is left alone to listen to the wind and the rain. The dust settles softly. The profound losses of the passing decade, the quiet departure of Mrs. Ramsay, the distant echoes of the war, are handled with remarkable gentleness, placed softly inside parentheses, like small, quiet whispers. Virginia shows how time slowly softens all things, weathering the edges of the furniture and fading the colors of the wallpaper, while the vast, indifferent beauty of the natural world simply continues its steady, unbroken cycle. And through all those long, empty years, while the house stands quietly in the dark, the beam of light sweeps slowly across the dark water. It is a continuous, reassuring rhythm that ignores the complicated dramas of human lives, asking absolutely nothing but offering a steady, quiet point of focus in the immense night. The light grazes the empty windows of the summer house, leaving a brief, pale glow on the floorboards before sweeping outward again to touch the distant, rolling waves. The rhythm is absolute. You can imagine that same steady rotation now, feeling the slow, gentle sweep of light marking the passing seconds with perfect, unwavering regularity. Each time the beam passes, it carries away a little more of the day's lingering tension, leaving behind a profound, settling darkness that invites the mind to drift further and further towards sleep. In the final section of the book, the surviving family members return to the summer house, finally making the long-delayed journey across the bay to reach the lighthouse itself. Alongside them is a painter named Lily Briscoe, who stands quietly on the lawn, struggling to finish a canvas she began a full 10 years earlier when the house was full of life. She realizes that she cannot bring the past back, cannot permanently freeze the beautiful, fleeting moments of harmony that Mrs. Ramsay once created, but she can find a profound peace in the present moment. She simply accepts. Lily draws a single, decisive line down the center of her canvas, finishing the painting not by solving the deep mysteries of time, but by gracefully accepting that everything is in a state of continuous, gentle flow. Virginia, too, finds this same quiet acceptance, feeling that by completing the book, she has successfully laid the heavy ghost of her mother to a peaceful, permanent rest. When the novel is finally published in May of 1927, it is greeted with a quiet, profound reverence by those who understand the delicate, beautiful thing she has accomplished. The success of the book is steady and strong, firmly establishing her as a writer capable of capturing the very essence of human experience without relying on the loud traditional mechanisms of plot. She is 45 years old, and she feels a deep, settling quietness in her mind, a comforting emptiness that follows the completion of a truly monumental task. The work is done. The heavy lifting of translating her deeply personal past into a universal, lasting form is completely finished, leaving her free to simply exist in the quiet warmth of her current life. She can sit in her garden at Monk's house, listening to the wind move softly through the trees, knowing that her memories are now safely contained within the closed pages of a book. As the evening deepens around her, the memory of that distant shore begins to fade softly into the background, gently replaced by the comfortable, present stillness of the dark Sussex night. Yet somewhere in the quiet reaches of her mind, the beam of light sweeps slowly across the dark water, a permanent rhythmic anchor holding everything perfectly steady. It is a rhythm you can borrow now, allowing your own slow, steady breath to match the gentle, sweeping rotation of the light across the distant waves. You are perfectly safe. There is nothing to hold on to, nothing to figure out, just the soft, predictable return of the light and the deep, comforting darkness that follows closely behind it. The water is calm, the house is completely quiet, and the mind can finally let go of the shore, drifting softly out into the peaceful, unbroken expanse of a deep and restful sleep. The seasons turn gently, carrying Virginia into the crisp, cool autumn of 1928, a time when her mind begins to settle into a new, quietly resolute rhythm. She is invited to speak to the young women at 2 colleges in Cambridge, stepping away from the solitary quiet of her writing room to share her thoughts with a new generation. The journey takes her to a place steeped in history, where ancient stone buildings stand peacefully under the gray English sky. She walks slowly. The air in these collegiate courtyards feels different, carrying the weight of long traditions and countless hours of quiet study. Though it is a world that has historically kept its doors closed to women, she moves through these spaces with a calm, observant eye, noting the vast libraries and the comfortable dining halls that she is only visiting, not inhabiting. Her mind is clear. She stands before the students in a softly lit room, looking out at their expectant faces, and begins to speak with the plain, unhurried clarity of a woman who has spent a lifetime turning raw experience into careful words. The subject she chooses to explore is simply the relationship between women and fiction, a topic that allows her to gently unravel the long and visible threads of history. She speaks to them not with the fiery urgency of a politician, but with the steady, measured tone of a storyteller who has discovered a profound and quiet truth. She explains that the absence of women from the great libraries of the past is not a mystery of nature, but a simple matter of material reality and the heavy demands of domestic life. A writer requires time, she softly tells them, a steady income to keep the cold at bay, and most importantly, a space where the mind can be entirely free from interruption. The room is perfectly still. The young women listen closely as she speaks, feeling the truth of her words settling into their own thoughts, like seeds finding fertile soil in a quiet garden. She paints a picture of history that is both devastating and wonderfully clear, replacing romantic myths of natural genius with the grounded, physical necessities of a table, a chair, and a closed door. To make her thoughts perfectly visible, she weaves a gentle, imaginary story for her audience, conjuring a brilliant sister for William Shakespeare. She asks them to picture a young woman with the same immense talent, but born into a life that offers her absolutely no space to let that genius safely bloom. This imaginary sister is not permitted to read in the quiet corners of the library, and finds her brilliant mind constantly interrupted by the endless necessary chores of the household. The story unfolds softly. Virginia describes how this bright, capable mind would slowly be worn down by the heavy friction of a world that simply had no room for her thoughts, leaving her extraordinary gifts lost to time. It is a melancholy tale, but it is delivered without anger, offered merely as a clear, quiet lens through which the students can finally understand the invisible structures shaping their world. You can see the closed doors. By giving this lost sister a shape and a story, Virginia gently honors all the brilliant, unwritten minds of the past, laying them to rest with a profound and lasting tenderness. When she returns to the quiet sanctuary of Monk's house, she takes the notes from these lectures and begins to weave them into a beautifully sustained essay that will eventually become a book. She sits at her own small writing desk, looking out the window at the familiar, comforting shapes of her garden, feeling the profound privilege of the quiet space she has built around herself. The essay is published the following year as A Room of One's Own, and it arrives in the world with the gentle, unstoppable force of a river finding its true course. The argument she makes holds a quiet power that will echo through the decades, stating firmly that a woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write. The words flow effortlessly. She writes with a light, almost conversational touch, guiding the reader through the heavy landscapes of history with a calm, reassuring hand that makes the most complex ideas feel perfectly natural. The book provides a profound sense of relief to countless readers, giving them the exact words they needed to understand their own lives. The physical act of writing this essay brings her a deep, settling satisfaction as she translates abstract thoughts into the solid, permanent reality of ink and paper. She knows exactly what it means to need a room, to require that firm physical boundary between the turning of her own mind and the endless demands of the outside world. The closed door is not a barrier to keep people out, but a necessary, protective shield that allows the delicate work of creation to unfold in absolute safety. The room is peaceful. Inside her own writing lodge, the only sounds are the scratch of her pen and the soft rustle of paper. This space is her anchor, a quiet harbor where the turbulent waters of her imagination are calmed and contained, allowing her to carefully build sentences that will last long after the ink has dried. She breathes in the stillness. It is a profound comfort to know that this room is entirely hers, that she can leave a thought resting on the desk in the evening and find it waiting there when the morning light returns. The publication of this book in 1929 solidifies her place as a writer of immense clarity and quiet authority. The success of the essay means she is read by people who might have found her novels too difficult, reaching a vast new audience with a voice that is astonishingly direct, warm, and deeply human. Yet the public recognition matters far less to her than the private, deeply felt truth of what she has managed to articulate. The work is simply done. She has taken a feeling that has hovered invisibly in the air for centuries, the quiet frustration of countless capable women, and she has gently anchored it to the earth, giving it a permanent, undeniable shape. The intellectual labor leaves her feeling pleasantly empty, a comfortable lightness that often follows the successful completion of a heavy, meaningful task, inviting her to rest in the quiet aftermath of her own clear thoughts. As the afternoon gently fades into evening, the light in her writing room begins to soften, turning the white pages on her desk into pale, glowing squares in the gathering twilight. She gently caps her pen, the small, decisive click, signaling the end of her thoughts for the day, and she stands up slowly, letting the quiet of the room fold around her. The house is waiting. She walks back across the garden path, the cool evening air brushing softly against her face, carrying with it the earthy, settling scent of the damp Sussex soil. Inside, the lamps are already lit, casting their warm, golden glow over the familiar furniture, promising a quiet evening of reading and deeply restful sleep. You can feel that same, protective quiet settling around you now. The comforting assurance that your own space is secure, that the door is safely closed, and that the world outside can completely wait. The mind is allowed to simply pause. There is no more thinking required tonight, just the steady, reassuring presence of your own quiet room, and the soft, unbroken rhythm of your breathing as you drift gently into the welcoming dark. The passing of the years brings a gentle, steady equilibrium to the rhythm of Virginia's daily life, as the 1920s gracefully yield to the quieter expanses of the 1930s. The turbulent waters of her early youth seem to have settled into a calm, predictable river, flowing smoothly through the familiar landscape she has carefully built around herself. She has learned how to balance the intense, solitary labor of her writing room with the restorative, necessary warmth of human connection. The days stretch out comfortably, When a long period of demanding work finally comes to a close, she no longer fights the heavy, inevitable exhaustion that follows, but quietly accepts it. She allows herself the profound grace of completely stopping, retreating into the slow, healing routines of domestic life until her mind is ready to gently turn again. The protective walls of her homes, whether in the heart of London or the quiet countryside of Sussex, are frequently warmed by the presence of old, cherished friends. These are the same brilliant minds she has known since the early days of Gordon Square, the people who have grown up alongside her and shaped the very contours of her world. The conversations they share are less urgent now, mellowed by time and shared history, settling into a comfortable, familiar cadence that requires absolutely no performance. Soft laughter is heard from another room. The voices of artists, critics, and writers drift gently through the hallways, creating a continuous, comforting hum of easy companionship that wraps around the house like a heavy blanket. She finds immense peace in these enduring bonds, knowing that these people understand the exact shape of her mind and require absolutely nothing from her but her quiet presence. The presence of her older sister, Vanessa, remains the most profound and steady thread running through the vast tapestry of her life, a relationship that predates all others. Vanessa is an artist, a woman who creates beautiful, tangible things with paint and canvas, moving through the world with a practical, grounding grace that Virginia deeply admires. They sit together in quiet rooms, their lives running in parallel, finding a deep, unspoken comfort in the shared memories of their childhood that no one else can truly understand. They do not need words. The simple act of watching Vanessa mix her paints or organize her home provides Virginia with a profound sense of safety, a reminder of the enduring, unbreakable strength of their family bond. As they grow older, the slight frictions of their youth slowly dissolve, leaving behind a perfectly clear, tranquil affection that sustains them both through the shifting tides of the years. Among the many other faces that bring light into her home during these years, one presence stands out with a particular, radiant, and entirely different kind of confidence. Vida Sackville-West is a fellow writer and a woman of remarkable aristocratic grace, bringing a sweeping, expansive energy into Virginia's carefully structured, deeply intellectual world. Their connection blossoms slowly. She offers Virginia a profound, sustaining affection that gives her a completely new sense of confidence, reminding her that she is deeply valued for her entire physical self. The friendship is passionate but peacefully held, an attachment that gently complements the stabilizing foundation of her marriage to Leonard without ever disrupting the quiet sanctuary of their shared home. Vida's presence is like a burst of warm sunlight breaking softly through a cloudy afternoon, illuminating the room and leaving a lingering, golden warmth behind. This particular relationship inspires a sudden, joyful burst of creativity, prompting Virginia to write a book that feels entirely different from the heavy, serious labor of her previous novels. She begins to write Orlando, a playful and deeply loving tribute to Vida and her vast, historical family estate, letting her imagination wander freely across 4 long centuries. The writing feels wonderfully light. It is a profound relief to step away from the demanding, delicate work of capturing pure consciousness, and instead to simply play with words, spinning a fantastical story that flows effortlessly. The book becomes a quiet, private joke shared with the entire reading public, a beautifully crafted gift that allows her to offer her friend a kind of gentle, literary immortality. The work requires absolutely no agonizing revision, no dark periods of doubt, but simply pours out of her with the bright, easy rhythm of a joyful, unhurried walk. When she is separated from her friends, the connections are carefully sustained through a steady, quiet stream of correspondence that crosses the damp English countryside. Letters are written by lamplight in the quiet hours of the evening, the soft scratch of her pen acting as a continuous, invisible thread pulling her loved ones gently toward her. She folds the heavy paper carefully. The physical act of writing letters requires a much lighter kind of focus, allowing her to share the small, ordinary details of her day without the intense pressure of creating art. She writes about the changing weather, the book she is reading, and the quiet routines of the house, packaging her daily life into neat, folded squares that travel safely through the night. The letters carry the faint scent of ink and the quiet warmth of her study, arriving in the hands of her friends as tangible reminders that they are closely, securely held in her thoughts. During the long, languid days of summer, the texture of these friendships shifts gracefully outdoors, taking root in the deeply comforting space of the garden at Monk's house. Visitors arrive on the weekends, stepping away from the noise and heat of London to walk slowly along the brick paths and rest quietly in the deep shade of the apple trees. The air is deeply fragrant. Virginia sits with her guests on the lawn, feeling the texture of the warm grass beneath her hands, listening as their voices blend softly with the rustle of the leaves overhead. There's absolutely no need to fill every silence with words, as the shared space and the quiet, indifferent beauty of the natural world provide a perfect, peaceful container for their companionship. They simply watch the clouds drift slowly across the wide Sussex sky, letting the hours slip by without any concern for what comes next. This extended period between the wars is a time of profound, productive stability, a gentle plateau where she can simply exist and watch the world quietly unfold around her. Leonard remains exactly where he has always been, a steadfast, quiet guardian who carefully monitors the rhythm of their days, ensuring that the foundations of her life remain perfectly secure. They are perfectly balanced. She relies heavily on his grounding, practical presence while drawing a different kind of vitality from her expansive circle of friends, creating a vast network that holds her safely suspended. The heavy, exhausting machinery of her brilliant intellect is constantly softened by the simple, physical reality of the people who love her, making the world feel remarkably safe and enduringly warm. Even when the work drains her energy, she knows that she is entirely surrounded by a quiet, unbreakable safety net woven from years of shared affection and deep mutual understanding. As the afternoon light gradually begins to fade into a soft blue twilight, the visitors eventually gather their coats, murmuring their quiet goodbyes as they slowly depart down the country lane. The house has gracefully returned to its familiar, unbroken stillness, holding the pleasant, lingering echoes of the day's conversation safely within its quiet, darkening rooms. The garden is resting now. Virginia returns to her favorite, deep chair by the fireplace, watching the embers settle into a low, steady, and comforting glow, feeling a deep gratitude for the peaceful life she has built. You can feel that same gentle settling in your own quiet space now, a soft recognition that the connections and events of your own day are safely, securely held. The people you care for are resting. The world outside has grown completely still, leaving you entirely free to let go. Close your eyes and softly drift toward a deep, unbroken sleep. The seasons continue their slow, inevitable turning, carrying the late 1930s gently into the quiet grayness of 1940. The world outside the garden is slowly changing its shape, as the heavy shadow of a new war settles softly over the continent and reaches across the English Channel. The events are distant, muffled by the rolling hills of Sussex. Monk's house becomes a permanent, necessary sanctuary. The air is still. Virginia and Leonard retreat entirely into the quiet rhythms of the village of Roadmell, pulling the comforting routines of domestic life closer around them. The days move with a slow, cautious grace, anchored by the simple, grounding tasks of tending to the garden and walking along the damp country lanes. In the city they left behind, the heavy architecture of their past is gently unmade. The houses they once knew in London, the rooms at Tavistock Square where the Hogarth Press first hummed with life, are quietly returned to dust by the falling bombs. There is no loud drama in her mind as she receives this news, only a profound, reflective distance. The past is letting go. The physical spaces of her youth are simply dissolving, leaving her memories to float freely, completely untethered from the heavy brick and mortar that once held them so securely. The past is slowly swept away, just as the autumn leaves are quietly swept from the garden paths, a natural clearing of space. At Monk's house, the turning of the year brings a deep, settling hush to the landscape. The River Oss winds its way slowly through the valley, a constant dark ribbon of water moving steadily toward the sea without hesitation. In the early mornings, a thick, white mist rises gently from the riverbanks, drifting softly across the damp fields and wrapping the house in a soft, insulating blanket. The world feels very small. She watches the mist from her window, breathing slowly in the cool air, finding a strange comfort in the way the fog blurs the sharp edges of the trees. The water flows quietly, asking absolutely nothing, endlessly repeating its slow, unhurried journey through the quiet countryside. She continues to walk to her writing lodge at the edge of the garden, stepping softly over the damp grass to work on one final novel. The story is called Between the Acts, centered around a village pageant taking place in the quiet days just before the world changes. The writing process is much slower now, moving with the heavy, deliberate pace of a mind that has already given so much. She rests her pen often. She watches the winter light filter slowly through the bare branches, listening to the gentle, rhythmic sound of the river in the distance, allowing her thoughts to simply drift without forcing them into perfect sentences. The immense, demanding labor of her earlier years is gracefully winding down. As the winter deepens, a familiar, heavy shadow begins to gather quietly at the edges of her mind. The illness that has visited her so many times before is gently returning, not as a sudden storm, but as a slow, rising tide of profound exhaustion. She recognizes the signs with a calm, clear-eyed certainty, feeling the quiet slipping of her concentration and the gentle return of the indistinct voices that hovered just beyond her reach. She is simply tired. The lifelong effort of holding the vast, complex architecture of her consciousness together has required an immense, heroic strength. She is slowly realizing that she no longer has the energy to maintain that delicate balance. The tide is coming in, moving softly and steadily over the sand. There's no panic in this realization, only a quiet, reasoned acceptance of what the natural course of things must be. She understands that she has reached the gentle boundary of her endurance, a quiet shoreline where the heavy burden of her brilliant mind can finally be laid down. In the early days of spring, she sits at her desk and writes a final, beautiful letter to Leonard. She's completely certain she thanks him for the years of immense happiness they have shared, acknowledging his unwavering care and the steady shelter he has always provided, explaining softly that she cannot ask him to carry her through the shadows one more time. The words are calm, deliberate, and overflowing with a deep, enduring love. The morning of March the 28th arrives with a cool, crisp stillness, the damp air holding the quiet promise of the coming spring. She puts on her heavy coat, taking her walking stick in her hand, and steps out of the house with the calm, unhurried purpose of someone embarking on a familiar, necessary journey. The house behind her remains perfectly peaceful. She walks slowly across the damp fields, moving steadily toward the River Ouse, her footsteps falling softly on the earth in a slow, rhythmic cadence. The mist hovers gently over the water, a soft gray veil that welcomes her approach, while the river continues its steady, murmuring flow, a continuous loop of water returning endlessly to its source. She pauses by the bank, gathering several heavy stones, placing them carefully into the deep pockets of her coat, a gentle grounding to help her find the deep rest she is seeking. She breathes in slowly. The cool, damp air fills her lungs, a quiet, steady gathering of peace. She breathes out gently. The weight of the world, the heavy, demanding noise of history, and the relentless turning of her own extraordinary mind all begin to gently fall away. She steps softly into the cool water. The river accepts her without judgment, a vast, quiet embrace that simply folds around her, carrying her gently away from the shore and into the profound, unbroken stillness she has desired for so long. There is absolutely no struggle, only a deep, final exhaling of a life lived with immense, beautiful intensity. The river flows on, uninterrupted, its steady, rhythmic movement a soothing lullaby that washes away every lingering trace of pain or exhaustion. The mist settles softly over the surface. The world she leaves behind continues to turn. The garden at Monk's house will eventually bloom again, and Leonard will quietly preserve the magnificent legacy she has left to the ages. But for Virginia, the complicated, demanding journey is entirely complete, leaving nothing but a vast, silent peace that stretches out endlessly, like a calm sea, beneath a quiet, starless sky. You can feel that same gentle rhythm of the water now, the slow, continuous rise and fall of the current mirroring the steady, calming pace of your own breath. The water breathes in. The water breathes in. The water breathes out. The heavy stones of the day, The worries and the endless thoughts that have occupied your mind are gently washing away, sinking softly into the deep, quiet river of the night. You are perfectly weightless. The mist is gathering softly around you, blurring the sharp edges of your room, wrapping you in a safe, insulated blanket of complete and total peace. There is nowhere else to go, nothing more to write, just the gentle, sweeping current of sleep pulling you safely, softly, and endlessly toward the deep, welcoming dark. The years move forward softly, carrying the world gently away from the heavy shadows of the 1940s and slowly reshaping the landscape of England into something entirely new. The world she knew is gone. The grand, layered Victorian houses with their strict rules, the cobblestone streets of her childhood, and the particular society she observed so closely have all dissolved completely into the pages of history. Yet, amidst all this quiet fading, the words she wrote remain perfectly intact, entirely untouched by the vast, sweeping passage of time. Her sentences simply endure. They sit patiently on wooden shelves in immense, quiet libraries, and they rest gently on small bedside tables in homes she could never have imagined. The thoughts she carefully caught and anchored to the page have become a permanent, peaceful part of the human landscape. They wait patiently in the dark. A reader today can open one of her novels and find the exact texture of a summer afternoon, preserved forever in the amber of her perfect prose. The survival of her work is not a loud, demanding triumph, but rather a soft, continuous presence that echoes gently through the decades. It is the quiet legacy of a mind that learned how to fold the vastness of time into a single, ordinary day, and how to capture the fleeting shapes of memory before they drifted away. The books are portable. They do not require the reader to understand the complex history of Bloomsbury or to know the precise geography of London, because the true landscape of her writing is simply the human mind. People come to her words looking for a quiet space to reflect, and they find a profound, welcoming stillness waiting for them within the pages. She wrote to be understood. She wanted her readers to feel the slow, steady rhythm of their own consciousness, to recognize the beautiful, fragile connections that hold our inner lives together. When a book is opened, her voice is there, speaking softly across the vast distances of language and experience, offering a companionable silence that asks nothing in return. She is a quiet guide. Her sentences flow like water, carrying the reader smoothly from one thought to the next, untangling the complicated knots of the day and leaving the mind feeling wonderfully clear and light. In the quiet village of Rodmell, the seasons continue their reliable turning, bringing the soft spring rains and the deep, restful snows to the garden at Monk's house. Leonard remains there for nearly 3 decades, moving softly through the familiar rooms, entirely dedicated to the gentle, unhurried work of tending to her memory. He gathers her letters. He sorts through the thousands of pages of diaries she left behind, reading her observations with a tender, protective care, and slowly preparing them so that her whole, brilliant self might be safely remembered. He does not build a loud monument, but instead creates a quiet, lasting shelter for her words, continuing the supportive partnership that defined their long life together. The house remains a sanctuary. Beneath the soil in the garden, the roots of the elm tree grow deep and strong, holding the earth steady, while visitors occasionally come to leave small, smooth stones in the grass. These visitors do not come with fanfare, but simply arrive with a quiet gratitude, seeking a moment of peace in the place where she found her own deep rest. The river Ouse flows on in the distance, a constant murmuring backdrop to the absolute stillness of the garden. Entirely indifferent to the passing of the years, the profound truths she discovered about the necessity of having a space of one's own continue to quietly unlock doors for countless others. Her gentle, reasoned argument that a person needs time, resources, and a closed door in order to think clearly has become a foundational comfort, a steady permission to simply claim one's own space. The room is safe. By putting words to the silent struggles of those who came before her, she created a vast, invisible architecture of support that stretches softly into the present day. Readers find an immense, settling relief in her essays, realizing that they do not have to carry the heavy expectations of the world, but can instead retreat into the quiet sanctuary of their own minds. The heavy lifting is done. The battles she fought with her own brilliant, restless intellect have yielded a profound peace that she generously passed on to anyone willing to sit quietly with her books. Her formal experiments, the way she gently broke apart the traditional shapes of storytelling, were never meant to confuse, but simply to capture the exact, flowing feeling of being alive. She mapped the territory. Every writer who tries to capture the drifting nature of a thought, or the soft blurring of past and present, is walking along the quiet paths she so carefully cleared. The heavy machinery of history has completely slowed its turning, and the vast, brilliant landscape of Virginia's mind has settled perfectly into a permanent, peaceful rest. The work is entirely finished. There are no more sentences to carefully construct, no more memories to untangle, and absolutely nothing left that requires your attention or your effort tonight. You can let the story gently fade, as the image of the quiet garden and the slow-moving river softly dissolve into the background. You are left with nothing but the comfortable, familiar boundaries of your own resting space. The house around you is settling deeply into the night, the small, occasional creaks of the wood acting as a soothing lullaby that assures you everything is secure and held. The room is dark, the air is cool and still, resting gently against your skin. A soft, physical reminder that the waking world has completely paused its demands. You can simply breathe in the quiet. With every slow, measured exhale, you can feel the lingering echoes of the day sinking deeper into the mattress, leaving your body feeling pleasantly heavy, warm, and entirely relaxed. The mind, which has spent the day constantly moving and associating and drifting from one thought to another, is finally permitted to simply stop. You do not have to hold it all together. The thoughts are slowing their pace, becoming as indistinct and soft as the gathering mist over a quiet country river, blurring the edges of everything that seemed so important just hours ago. The stillness is profound. It wraps around you like a thick, woolen blanket, insulating you from the noise of the outside world, and creating a perfect, self-contained universe where only your breathing matters. The breath rises softly. The breath falls gently. This simple, continuous rhythm is exactly like the sweeping beam of a distant lighthouse, a reliable, unending rotation that anchors you firmly in the deep peace of the present moment. There is no past to remember right now, and absolutely no future to anticipate. Only the quiet, steady passage of this one single, restful second. The light fades away. The deep, welcoming darkness is expanding softly to fill the room, washing away the last traces of color and form, and inviting you to surrender completely to its gentle weight. You can feel the profound relief of simply letting go, of allowing the deep, heavy tiredness to completely overtake your muscles and quiet your brilliant, active mind. The work of the day is done. The stories have all been told. The final pages have been turned, and the heavy covers are being gently closed, sealing the words safely inside until the morning light returns. You are perfectly weightless. The quiet is an ocean, and you are drifting effortlessly further and further out, floating smoothly on a calm, dark surface that stretches endlessly in every direction. The air is perfectly still. The last, quiet echoes of the world are fading, leaving absolutely nothing behind but the deep, rhythmic rise and fall of a body entirely at peace. There is nowhere else you need to be. There is nothing else you need to know. Rest is here. Somewhere, a book is closing softly, and so, gently, are you.